So we heard some transcendental sound vibration, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. My spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, once said that knowledge, scientific knowledge used to show the validity of Krishna's teachings in the Vedic literature is also a kind of kirtan or transcendental sound. So we'll have a little bit of that and then have some prasadam. So my topic tonight is Vedic cosmology and its modern relevance. Because the Vedic teachings are thousands and thousands of years old. They were written down in the Vedic literature, and cosmology is specifically dealt with in the Puranas, which are the cosmological writings next. And the leaders of the ancient Vedic society, the leading political leaders, intellectual leaders, the kings and the great sages, they understood that we're not alone in the cosmos. We're part of a whole cosmic hierarchy of beings. And they were in intimate contact with those different beings at different levels of reality. I mean, this past summer, there was some hubbub in the United States because there was going to be a government report about UFOs and things like that. Turned out to be not so much. Even though there are a lot of interesting things going on over the past year, Navy pilots filming UFOs and things like that. But the report just said, well, yeah, these things are unidentified. We haven't identified them yet, but we're pretty sure that we can identify them in some way that's acceptable. Like, that they're just some kind of technology from some foreign country or from our own military, or there's some natural phenomenon. Can't really say that they're from some other world. But the leaders of the Vedic society, they were totally aware of these things, and they totally disclosed them to the public. So I'm going to say a few words about the Vedic cosmology this evening. Next. I'm actually involved with a project in India that deals with Vedic cosmology. My spiritual master, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, wanted his movement, which we're part of, the Hare Krishna movement, to build in India, in Mayapur in West Bengal, the temple of the Vedic planetarium, which would be dedicated to educating and demonstrating to the general public some aspects of Vedic cosmology, its picture of the universe. And of course, this is an artist conception, but it really is happening. Next. This is the structure of that huge building that's already up. So part of it is going to be a museum and planetarium theater dedicated to these concepts. Next. But I don't claim, and we don't claim, to have a monopoly on truth. I think truth can be found in a lot of the world's great spiritual traditions. So we also honor and respect those. We're not like trying to convert everybody to something else. Next. So the questions that come up in cosmology. Cosmology means, what is this universe? What is my place in it? Basically, who am I? Where am I in the cosmos? And where should I be going? These are fundamental questions that we all have to confront sooner or later in our lives. Next. So the answers that we give in the Temple of Vedic Planetarium are going to come from the Vedic literature, the Puranas, especially the Bhagavat Purana, or Srimad Bhagavatam, as it's called. Next. And one thing I like about the Vedic literature, the Puranas, is that they're presented not in some dogmatic way, but as a series of questions and answers. Like a student will inquire from the teacher, but what about this? What about that? So it's, I like that style very much. Next. So this first question, who am I? Next. Today, most scientists, in giving an answer to that question, will tell us we're just machines made of matter. We're just machines made of molecules. So it's a very materialistic conception of our identity. And that has an effect on our values, our goals, our ambitions in life. Next. If you can give somebody, you can dictate to them their identity, then you've automatically really controlled them, because they'll act in terms of that identity. I went to a museum in South Africa at an archaeological site called Sterkfontein, where they believe they have evidence for their theory that human beings evolved from apes. And when you first enter the museum, you see this big sign that says, "Discover yourself." And then next, they quote this scientist, Richard Dawkins: "Discover yourself. We are survival machines, robot vehicles blindly programmed to preserve the selfish molecules known as genes." So if you define somebody's identity like that you're a robot, you're a purely mechanical being in competition with others to get your genes surviving in the gene pool, what is your life going to be like under that? You'll think that to produce and consume more and more material things in competition with others who are doing the same thing is the main purpose of human life, and you'll get the kind of world that we see around us today. Next. This process of unlimited material production and consumption is driving the environmental crisis that's poisoning our air, poisoning our land, poisoning our water, resulting in huge climate change and other things that are very destructive. Next. And this spirit that we're survival machines, that we're in competition with everyone and everything to get everything we need individually and collectively, is the driving source of conflict in the world on all levels between individuals, classes, nations, religions even. So next. So how do we change that? We have to change our sense of identity. Instead of thinking we're accidental beings in an accidental universe, that we're purely material beings, we should understand, as the Vedanta Sutra says, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit, not I am chemicals, I am DNA, but I am a spirit soul. I am a being of pure consciousness. Next. And this idea of consciousness is sort of the key to the Vedic cosmology. It's a knowledge, consciousness-based universe. And what does material science say about that? They have no explanation for the origin of consciousness. They say, oh, it's a byproduct of chemical activities in the brain. And at the time of death, when the chemicals stop interacting, there's no more consciousness, no more love, no nothing. Next. And a lot of thinkers these days are starting to realize there's something wrong with that picture, that you really can't get consciousness from matter. So where does it come from? This philosopher Thomas Nagel wrote this interesting book called Mind and Cosmos. And in it, he says, next, that, that's kind of academic language. I'll translate it into some simpler language. He says, this problem of consciousness, it threatens the whole materialistic, naturalistic world of science. It's going to cause, if they don't find a solution to this, it's going to cause the whole system to break down. Next. So there is some scientific evidence that shows that consciousness can exist apart from matter. It's not produced by the brain. It can exist outside the body. Like, some of the evidence comes from medical studies of out-of-body experiences. There are times when a person should be completely unconscious, as during a heart attack. The heart stops beating, blood stops flowing to the brain. The medical instruments show that the brain waves stop. A person in that condition shouldn't be aware of anything. But many people in that condition report separating from their bodies, looking down, seeing what the doctors and nurses are doing to revive them. And several doctors and other scientists have carefully investigated this phenomenon, and they say it's real, it's true. Next. So during these experiences, it appears that the conscious self, the Atma, the soul, temporarily separates from the body and then re-enters the same body. And people will report these experiences. Next. But this leads to another idea, namely that the conscious self can separate from one body and then enter a completely different material body or vehicle. And that's called reincarnation, transmigration of the soul. Next. So now that we get some basic concept of what we are, who we are, we're conscious selves, we're spirit souls, we're Atmas that are different from the body made of matter. Then we have to ask, okay, where am I in the cosmos at the present moment? Next. Right now, our consciousness is in a very restricted place. We identify with bodily vehicles that are temporary. I'm getting to the end of mine, but it's like it lasts only for a certain amount of time, and then where are you? So we feel a little discomfort about that. And I think the reason we feel discomfort when we're conducted with things that suggest our temporary nature is that deep inside, we are eternal conscious beings. So there should be a place where that consciousness can express itself freely, free from birth, death, old age, disease, all the kinds of limitations that we're subjected to on this level of reality. So according to the Vedic cosmology, there is such a place. The world of pure consciousness, or Brahman, or Param Brahma, the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, full of spiritual planets. Next. And there, each conscious self is living in loving harmony with all other conscious selves and with the source of all conscious living entities, who is known in the Vedic cosmology by the name Krishna. And the relationships among the conscious entities on that level of reality beyond birth and death are sometimes characterized as a cosmic divine dance. In other words, there's ananda, there's bliss. Next. So we may ask ourselves, if that's the natural environment for the conscious self, what are we doing here? Why aren't we there? And that's because at some point, the conscious self, having free will as one of its qualities, has put itself in a condition where it's no longer qualified. It's not qualified to exist on that level. Next. So for such conscious entities, for such beings, there is an alternative reality, a place where the conscious self can act in a way that suits it. Like on the spiritual level of reality, only one thing goes on: pure, loving devotion to Krishna, to the Supreme Conscious Being, loving harmony among all conscious beings. If a conscious self becomes egotistical and desires to dominate and control others, it can't exist on that place, in that place. There must be another place for it. So that's the material cosmos that we inhabit now. That's the place. Now it has two purposes. We can the conscious selves can try to enjoy themselves apart from the supreme conscious living entity, Krishna. They can try to dominate, control, exploit the resources of matter to the best of their ability. Or they can take advantage of the opportunities that Krishna gives to qualify themselves to go to that higher level of reality. Next. So this world is, in a sense, it's like a virtual reality system for conscious selves who aren't really fit at the present moment to exist on that higher level of reality. Next. And that virtual reality is designed to give certain types of experiences to the conscious selves. And the experiences, these experiences come through the senses of different kinds of material bodies. Because the original form of pure consciousness, the original form of the soul, is good for only one thing: transcendental, loving, devotional service, harmonious, loving relationships among all conscious entities. That's the only thing. If you try to use it for some other purpose, you can't. So in the virtual reality system of the material universe, we're given a different form, a form of matter, a body that we identify with as our real self. Just like in a virtual reality system, you can have an identity, an avatar. It's different from your form in real life, but in the virtual reality, you identify with that form. So Krishna, being very intelligent, has understood that there are about 8,400,000 different kinds of bodily vehicles that will enable the soul, the conscious self, to undergo different experiences in this virtual reality system of the material cosmos. So a certain number of plant species, animal bodies, human bodies, insect bodies, fish bodies, they're all there. Anything you want, you can experience in this material world. But you have to accept birth, death, old age, disease, lifetime after lifetime. Next. So also there are a variety of places in the material cosmos. It's not that everything is the same. Not only do you get a different body somewhere, you're on some particular planet or level of reality. They're called lokas, which is a Sanskrit word. We kind of get our concept of location from that. Location. So there are different locations in the material cosmos. Next. So you get a virtual body in a virtual world. It could be heavenly, it can be hellish, it could be like our Earth is one location. Next. And to have a human form on this earthly planet is considered very, very fortunate. As I mentioned, there's a process of reincarnation. The body becomes old, diseased, eventually it disintegrates, but the soul goes on to its next life according to its mental state in this life. It could be another human birth in this world next. And there's some proof of this process of reincarnation. It comes from psychiatric studies of past life memories. For example, Dr. Ian Stevenson especially dealt with young children reporting past lives. And he was able to verify in hundreds of cases the child claimed to have been in a past life next. But sometimes the path of the soul may not be going just from human body to another human body. There's a kind of evolution of the soul. It's different than the kind of evolution that Darwin talked about. But the soul may be in an animal body and gradually go through different types of animal species till it comes to the human form next. So we may go through many, many species before coming to the human form next. But from the human form, it's also possible to go down in the species next. So, and that's kind of understandable that you could go down because, like if you have to drive a car, you have to have a license. If you misuse the car, if you use it in a way that you harm other people, DUI or this, your license will get taken away. And then you can't drive the car. You got to drive some other vehicle, ride a bicycle, take a bus, something. So it's the same with the human form of life. If we don't use it for its real purpose, which is to educate ourselves about what our real nature is and come to that level of pure consciousness so we can graduate from this little educational institution we find ourselves in. So the human form of life is very valuable. And I'm going to point out something. That means the universe has a purpose. The purpose is to allow conscious selves to educate themselves about and qualify themselves to have the best position in their next life, which is a position of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. That's its purpose. So that's the purpose of the universe. It's not an accidental universe. So the human form of life has always been available to human beings, according to the Vedic cosmology. From the time a universe is manifest, the human form of life is there. So it's a little different than what scientists today say. They say, we evolved from apes fairly recently. Next. They say first human beings came into existence about 300,000 years ago. Before that, there was only more primitive ape-like creatures, monkeys. Next. So it was mentioned in the introduction to this talk that I was the author of a book, Forbidden Archaeology, which presents evidence that's really consistent with the Vedic cosmology, showing that humans have existed far before 300,000 years ago. Next. But, this information, this evidence isn't very well known because of a process of knowledge filtration that operates in the world of science. Next. I'm going to, I think I'm taking it maybe a little more time than is normally taken up by the talk, so I'm going to go a bit quicker. Next. This is just a case, the California gold mine discoveries next, that are about 50 million years old. Next. Reported to the world by a very prominent scientist, J.D. Whitney. Next. But kind of rejected because this evidence contradicted the now dominant theories. Next. But the artifacts are still there in that museum. Next. And they're not shown to the public. They're kept in a storeroom a few miles from the museum. Next. But they're still there, 50 million year old artifacts from the California gold mines. Next. But the most important events in history are the appearances of the different incarnations of God, the Supreme Conscious Being, who comes. For example, this is an incarnation of Krishna called Kapila, and his mother, Devahuti, is questioning him about the Vedic cosmology, the nature of this world. So these avatars come to remind us of these questions. Who are we? Where are we? Where should we be going? What should we really be doing with our lives next? So where should we be going? We're here in the material world now, in the human form of life, which is good. It's an opportunity, but we have to make use of it to go back home, back to Godhead next. But to get from here to there, we have to understand a few things about where we are. It's like when you go to an airport, and you're going to fly to Paris or New York City or whatever. In order to get to the plane, you have to understand the airport, how it's laid out, how to navigate it, how to get through it. So to get to the spiritual world, we're going to have to understand some things about this material world, which is like an airport for us. It's a place that we can take off from to arrive at our destination next. So this universe that we're in, it didn't come about simply by chance, as most scientists now believe. It was designed for a purpose next. The world, the universe, if we look at it from a scientific point of view, we see that it's finely tuned for life, including human life, to exist in it next. For example, if you compare the mass of the proton to the mass of the electron in an atom, you find it set to a very particular value, 1,836.12 to 1. If it were even slightly different, there wouldn't be stable atoms, there wouldn't be bodies, there wouldn't be stars, there wouldn't be planets next. This British astronomer, the Royal Astronomer of England, he pointed out, he had a book called Just Six Numbers, and there are these 6 ratios of natural forces and different things like that. I won't get into the details, but he wrote, if any of these were even just slightly different, we wouldn't have the universe as we know it next. Now, some scientists, they try to get around this by saying, well, there are many universes where these values are set differently, and we just kind of won the lottery. It's like winning a big lottery, millions and millions of. We just happen to be in the universe where everything is set up, and that's why we notice this fine-tuning next. Well, according to the Vedic cosmology, there are millions of universes. There are millions and millions of universes that come from the form of the Mahavishnu. When he breathes out, the universes go out from him. When he breathes in, the universes come back in. So there are millions of universes, and they're all designed for life, and they all have life in them. Next. That's the universes coming out. Next. So, some scientists today have the idea that some of them say the universe is just going to keep expanding until everything just fades out. Others say it expands to a certain point and stays the same. And then others say, like the Vedic cosmology says, that the universe is come into existence and then they expand and then they contract. Next. So the universes contract back into Mahavishnu next. So these details of the Vedic cosmology are explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam next. And they are described, the universe is described as a universal form of God, made from God's energy. Next. So it's important to meditate on that fact, to try to see that this material world is not just our little playground. It's actually a form of God, not the ultimate form, but we should still recognize it. And in Bhagavad Gita, like Lord Krishna says, I am the light of the sun and the moon. So every day we see the sun, every day, every night, not every night, but most nights you can see the moon. And we should understand that's an energy of God. That's Krishna is present in that light of the sun and moon and stars next. Krishna says, I am the Himalayas. So when we see some grand feature of this world, we should recognize in it the presence of God next. Of rivers, I am the sacred Ganges. So when we see some mighty river like the Amazon or the Nile or the Ganges, we should understand God is present there next. I am the flower-bearing spring. So see some beautiful flowers, pleasant weather in springtime. That's Krishna, that's God next. So those are visible elements of the material universe. But there are also some things that are not visible with our present level of senses. Next. And this kind of takes us into the realm of sacred geography. If you look at different wisdom traditions, they have a picture of the world that we live in that is somewhat different from what we see. Like, among the Norse people, kind of like the Vikings in Europe, they had this picture of the universe as a big tree called Yggdrasil. And next. So similarly, in the Vedic cosmology, there is a level of material reality that is beyond our present sensory experience. But if we could raise our senses to the proper level, we'd be able to perceive that. Where our Earth is part of this island called Jambudweep, in the middle of which there's this huge mountain made of gold. So we don't perceive things like that. Next. Yeah, it's just 2 or 3 more slides. It'll be over. It'll be over, I promise. Well, during prasadam, when it's served out, I'll be here. Yes. Yes, perfect. Okay. And then beyond that central island, there's a whole system of ring islands and oceans next. And the whole inhabited area of the universe is covered by massive layers of the different material elements next. So who am I, where am I, and where should I be going? I am at being of pure consciousness, the spirit soul, where am I? I'm now in the material world. Where should I be going? To the spiritual world by chanting Hare Krishna and taking prasadam next. So that's where I want to go. It's where we should all want to go next. And that's it. So thank you very much. Enjoy your meal, and I'll stick around in case any of you have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Well, I've got a mic. Hare Krishna. Is it okay? I don't want to push you.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is, okay, fine. And I'm playing the role of the materialist.
Okay.
You gave this example of how if one factor is off and there's the 6, numbers, if any of those are off, then the whole thing falls apart. And that's proof of some kind of design. Well, and then you said, and some people say, well, there's so many dud universes where the factors weren't correct and they just fizzled out or imploded or, whatever. And we're the one that actually worked out and we won the lottery.
Yeah.
Then you go on and say, but there are other universes. Why do I have to accept this freighted that there's all this spiritual and other universes? I accept that we won the lottery. You throw the dice enough times, you're going to get double sixes. So it just, some universes didn't work out. The very fact that we're here and able to think about it and think about, maybe there's other things, is just that we're the universe that worked out. It's just the law of averages and chances and laws of physics, and there's no design or rhyme or reason. I'm done.
That's your opinion. You can't demonstrate it. Where's your evidence of these other universes? And where is your evidence that they're uninhabited, that they are duds? That would be my question to the materialist. And they raise these questions themselves.
We haven't seen everything. I mean, you look up, there's, that we've got whatever it is, we've gone to Mars, we're going wherever, and we're exploring the universe. And once we get outside of our universe, there may be so many duds. We don't know.
You don't know. That's right.
Whoops.
That is correct. You don't know. So, I mean, it's an interesting speculation, but there's absolutely no proof of it other than your desire, materialist.
Well, what about, they're seeing with their electric, telescopes, and they got Hubble out there and...
Yes, but that's just covering our universe. And in our universe, everything is finely tuned to support life and stable planets and stars.
So, and I don't want to monopolize, I'll finish here. So you're saying, and I think it's accurate, that we only know what we know. We only know this universe. You can speculate about what's going on. You could say the moon's made out of green cheese, or, there's another universe that, they're all Smurfs. You can say whatever you want. But this universe, we do know. And in this universe, everything's finely tuned. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else got to ask away, my friend?
I know that we discussed briefly about UFO sightings and of course life and other cosmos and so forth. I was just curious. My question is why do you feel as though other entities from other from other cosmos and in the galaxies, etc., have never officially revealed themselves onto, I guess, this universe? And if they did reveal themselves onto this universe and chose to, come to this plane, what would they say, and what would that kind of interaction kind of look like?
Well, the entities from other universes have come. And actually, in one sense, as beings of pure consciousness, as spirit souls, none of us are from this earth. We're all extraterrestrials, so that's one thing. But according to the Vedic teachings, beings from higher planets, even from the spiritual world, do come to this world, and they identify themselves, and they give teachings to help educate us to what our real nature is. And actually, the whole Vedic literature is based on that. And the accounts, the historical accounts in the Puranas, describe how beings on this earth were in contact with these higher intelligent beings from other planets, other universes, even from the spiritual level of reality. So that is something that was understood by the people in Vedic times. There are elaborate descriptions of these things in the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Can you hear me? No? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I used to speak on the microphone. Did those higher beings went through the human experience as well?
Yes, but not like an ordinary human being. For example, just a short time ago, we celebrated Janmashtami, the appearance day of Lord Krishna. So the way that happened, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, was that the earth, thousands of years ago, about 5,000 years ago, was being overrun by huge armies, military forces, because the different kings on this earth were building up huge militaries, and they were getting ready for a big conflict. So the earth goddess, whose name is Bhumi, the goddess in charge of the earth, went to the chief demigod, Brahma, and said, things are getting really bad on earth. So Brahma then established communication with Krishna, who exists on a totally different level of reality. And the way he did that was they went to this milk ocean, and they stood on the shore of it, and they just meditated and mentally transmitted their requests to Krishna. And then Brahma received a mental communication from Krishna saying, okay, I'm going to handle it. I'm going to come and take birth in the earth, on the earth, and I'm going to ask my associates in the spiritual world to also take birth. Now, at the same time, the forces of darkness, they were also arranging for demoniac people to take birth in different families on earth. So the whole thing was being set up like a big conflict. So Krishna did appear on earth, he first appeared to his mother Devaki and father Vasudeva in the form of a small child, but with 4 arms and a Vishnu form. So it was obvious it was some kind of supreme being. And then his mother was afraid that the king, one of the leading demoniac kings, Kamsa, would find out and try to kill her child. So Krishna was playing like that, like a human being, but really, he's the supreme personality of Godhead, but he's capable of playing like, acting, you could say, like an ordinary human to kind of draw out the emotion from his devotees. Okay, something else.
Hare Krishna. I'm over here. I just wanted to deeply give you my thanks for coming here today and explaining the science of Krishna consciousness so eloquently, but yet very sweetly, and coming up with such a wonderful breakdown and visual aspects for us to take in. I really appreciate your visit, Prabhu.
Well, I kind of had to rush through it too, so I didn't get to everything, but thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Not tomorrow morning, because I have a meeting of the Temple of Vedic Planetarium exhibits group that I'm chairing, actually, so I have to attend that meeting. I think the other, I'm not entirely sure of everything, but I know I'm giving a home program tomorrow night. I assume Bhagavatam class on Saturday. Saturday morning.
So yeah, Drutakarma Prabhu, his speaking schedule is Friday night, somebody's home. We could give you the details if you want. I could give you the details later. Saturday here in the morning, 7:45 a.m. for the class, morning class. And then Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. and Monday night at 6 p.m. and Tuesday 7:45 a.m. So you have pretty much the next few days.
Tuesday when?
7:45 a.m.
a.m.
Yeah.
Is that the morning
Bhagavatam
class?
class, yeah.
Bhagavatam class.
If you can.
Okay. I should be able to.
All right. I don't know if we told you about that one yet.
Yeah.
Yes. So. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, thank you, Drutakarma Prabhu, again for speaking with us tonight. And yeah, if anybody else has any more questions, you could come and see him. Bill could answer them for you. And yeah, thank you all for attending. We'll have this again next Thursday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.